Hello, I'm Stephen Baker. I'm a microbiologist at the University of Cambridge, and I run a research group that studies drug-resistant infections. Our main focus is trying to understand how bacteria become resistant to antibiotics and what we can do about it. So AMR stands for antimicrobial resistance. So what's an antimicrobial? An antimicrobial, you may have also been heard called an antibiotic. It's something we use to treat infections caused mainly by bacteria. Antimicrobial resistance, therefore, is when the bacteria that we're infected with become resistant to antibiotics and therefore we can't treat them anymore. And that's a problem because it means that we're running out of potential treatments, or it means we have to use more expensive treatments, or the treatments that we do have become less effective. And it's probably one of the biggest healthcare challenges we have at the moment. So AMR is an enormous problem. It's an enormous problem in the UK, it's an enormous problem across Europe, but it's a particularly big problem across Asia, Africa and other parts of the world, particularly in what we call low and middle income countries. The reason being is because there is a greater burden of infectious diseases in these places, there is greater use of antimicrobials, and therefore there's more likelihood that the organisms that people are infected with become resistant to antibiotics, and therefore there's more likelihood that these organisms will then spread onwards and cause infections in other people. So while it's a problem within the UK, and we're very aware of it from problems such as C. difficile in hospitals or MRSA, I would argue that it's a bigger problem in many low-income countries purely due to the burden of disease and the likelihood that new resistant organisms are going to come from these places. So what can we do about AMR? In the short term, we can all take some responsibility for it. As I said earlier, a lot of the problem is emerging in low middle income countries. So there is an issue with then how we can then restrict or reduce access to antimicrobials. We can stop or restrict access to the use of antimicrobials, which happens a lot in farming for the production of vegetables and also animals. We can not take antimicrobials when we don't need them, for sake when we had a viral infection such as COVID-19 or influenza. So our best way of reducing antimicrobial resistance is to use less antimicrobials. However, that won't solve the problem. Antimicrobial resistance is inevitable when we try and kill bacteria with small molecules. The bacteria inevitably at some point will become resistant to them somehow. So while we can't stop it, we can certainly slow it down. And our responsibility probably at the moment before we come up with new solutions is to try and slow down the process of AMR, which is going to be key for then how we tackle the problem over the next 10 to 20 years. In the longer term, what do we need? We need new solutions. So we need to learn or use or exploit new ways of killing bacteria using different approaches. And there are many groups, including my own research group, which are trying to find new ways which we can exploit to kill and prevent disease from bacteria. But also then we can introduce and exploit the use of new approaches into vaccine technology. So if we then immunise against such infections, then hopefully we won't have to treat them in the first place, and therefore the chance of becoming resistant is a lot lower. So what can we do? Just to summarise, we can use less antibiotics in the short term, and then we can come up with new approaches in the longer term, both to treat drug-resistant infections, but also to prevent them through the use of vaccines.